Welcome to the program. Now, Tony, I'm going to ask you let me get your initial thoughts, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, as someone with a background in aviation, I mean, this is an extraordinary incident, isn't it? With F-15 fighter jet, one of the fastest fighter jets in the world, coming up extremely close to an airliner. Obviously, the pilot is trying to keep his passengers safe, so he has to take evasive action. And what it seems from the statements from CENTCOM is that this inspection was the pilot of the F-15 was trying to look through the windows of the airliner to see what was inside and who was inside. This is beyond a joke. This is actually what it really is a provocation. And what is this F-15 even doing in Syrian airspace? You could completely understand if the Syrian government was to say, well, actually, we want airliners to be able to fly around safely in our airspace. And if the Americans are going to fly jets in from Jordan, Israel, or wherever direction they're coming from, we're going to shoot them down using surface-to-air missiles to shoot down US fighter jets if they're going to start flying around and flying out and harassing airliners. I mean, obviously, this is very unpleasant for the passengers, but thank God everyone's arrived safely in Beirut, which has to be, you know, at least the good side of this story is that everyone now. But anyway, what was going on here? What was really going on? I think what was happening potentially was that the US jet was trying to trick the air defences of Iran to shoot the airliner down rather than the jet. I mean, we know that back on the 8th of January there was this very sad incident which the Iranians have apologised for, where Ukraine Airlines flight 752 with 170 people on board was accidentally shot down at the height of tension. And this is what the Americans seem to love, even though if they take a look at their own law, and these are the men of lawlessness in America, their own law says they should not be flying in Syria. They haven't got congressional approval. As far as I know, they haven't even actually got presidential approval to be flying in Syria. Donald Trump is trying to actually, the last I saw, was trying to retrieve troops. And then again, on the other hand, we've got the Israelis in their own press last week were saying that the leaks are that they want to get a war started before the US elections, because that will enable them to dominate those elections with the Israeli war agenda. And so I think it's incredible that what is happening here is not benefiting the United States, and yet F-15 fighter jets are flying around basically doing Israel's foreign policy for it, many thousands miles away from the continental United States.
Thank you, Tony. And Mr. Jim W. Dean, how do you see the accosting of this Iranian passenger plane by these two U.S. jets? Do you see it as something that was spontaneous, or do you see it as something that was actually pre-planned?
I think it was obviously planned. Fighter jets would never take responsibility of doing something like this. They knew exactly that it was a provocation, and they flew whatever their flight plan was. They flew based on instructions. So that's why I mentioned it's a sad thing for the American military that they have to take orders to be involved in something like this, which is really a tragedy against civilian airlines. And then Iran should, and I know they're going to do this, take everything they can to take this to the appropriate airline international organizations and possibly to the UN. That something like this needs to stop. We just can't have something like this happen without some international penalties of it, rather than just being left to Iran to have to deal with it.
And Jim, how far up the ladder do you think that in that case the order for this went?
Oh, I think this would have gone all the way up to Trump in the middle of an election like this, where every little incident can affect the headlines. No general would have taken responsibility for doing something like this without letting the White House know that it was going to happen.
Thank you. And Tony, you have any final thoughts you can share with us?
Well, look, the United States is behaving in an absolutely appalling fashion, and they don't seem to care, which is more of a problem, because, you know, this is really going to only basically playing along to the Israeli war plans with Iran. Or are they playing at? But look, don't forget the United States took on over 1,000 Nazis after the Second World War into the CIA and into the intelligence agencies. Remember, that is 1,000 ex-Nazis working in the CIA. This has only come out within the last few years, and that's just the CIA. So where are the other thousands that went to the United States under Operation Paperclip when. Who knows? And it's interesting to note that CENTCOM, which is the part of the US military which is trying to dominate the Middle East, they have one of their unified commands for every single part of the planet. And this is one for the Middle East, is based in Stuttgart, Germany. So maybe it's not too far-fetched to say that actually there's a bit of a fascistic, Hitlerian element to this kind of behaviour that the United States seems to be doing now, provoking, using military aircraft against civilians. This is something, of course, the US has been doing for many, many years, using soldiers to kill and shoot and threaten ordinary civilians, as the Israelis have been doing in the West Bank and to the Palestinians as well.
Antonio, if you're Iran, where do you get recourse for this? Because you very well know that the major superpowers, including the U.S., enjoy a certain kind of a protection, a certain kind of shield, exemption. In essence, you can't touch them at the UN Security Council. You can't really touch them at the ICC. So where can you touch them?
Well, you can touch them here on this channel, although I'm afraid it's banned in Britain, and that's how much our free press works here. But yes, you know, this needs to be discussed properly in the international media, which I don't doubt in the West it won't be. It will be spun in a pro-US, pro-Britain direction, because Britain is trying to desperately to do a deal with the United States and really has become part of the US empire again. Now we've left the EU, we're part of a different empire to the west of us. But you know, redress has to be, I think, through the most important international bodies, which is still the United Nations, through the General Assembly, which is actually a very fair organisation. Get it discussed there, and let's have a Secretary General of the United Nations that grows a pair and gets involved in these sorts of things, rather than only talking about climate change, which is what he seems to do. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I mean, I think that the UN really does need to take a line here, draw a line in the sand and say no war provocations in the Middle East.
Thank you, Tony. And Jim, your final thoughts, please.
Well, we have a dangerous situation. We have a dangerous man in office as president, and we need to put as much pressure on the military and the U.S. knowing that they're being watched. But the problem is, what can anybody do when you have a country that's basically fairly comfortable in having a rogue nation reputation, because they feel that makes them look like the tough guy in the unipolar world that they have signed on to serve and as best as they can. And that's really a threat to all of us.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for joining us. Jim W. Dean from Grand Rapids, Michigan, Mr. Tony Gosling, they are joining us from Bristol. And viewers, that's a wrap for this segment of your Press TV's News Review. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye for now.